Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Just want to tell you a little bit about a recent trip I took. I went to the Name Your Game Expo in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Did that over the weekend. It's about a 4.5 hour drive from Fort Worth, Texas. I was invited out as a guest. Well worth the trip. Had a great time. I just want to show you guys some pickups I made and talk a little bit about the show. So I left Friday afternoon, and on the way I stopped in Edmond, Oklahoma, which is near Oklahoma City. And I did that because I was going to stay with my friend Delph Meek and then drive up early the next morning to go on into Tulsa to the show. Delph is a really cool guy. I've known him for many years. I met him I actually met him at the Oklahoma Video Game Expo years ago, and have pretty much been friends with him ever since. We hang out a lot at different game shows. He'll come over to my house, hang out with the family and whatnot. Really cool guy. So we hung around his house, watched some gaming YouTube videos, and we went running around a little bit. We had an onion burger, which I highly recommend. If you're ever in the Oklahoma City area, go to Onion Burger, great place. We also went to Half Price Books. Now, anytime I'm anywhere near a Half Price Books, when I'm traveling, it's a book chain in Texas and the Midwest and a few other places. Half Price Books is a great place for gaming, for used books. You can catch them slipping sometimes. They'll put things out that you might find that you can put on eBay or just for your collection or whatever. Great reading materials, games, records, the works. So let me show you what I found. For just $2, I found a pair of these extender cables put out by My Arcade. They are for the NES Classic and the NES Classic and the SNES Classic. Now, as many of you know, one of the complaints about those two plug-and-play consoles is that the controller wires are really short. But with this, it's 10 foot. You can kick back on your couch and play the consoles very comfortably. And it says it also works for classic controllers for the Wii and the Wii U. So very cool. I found 2 of these for just $2 each, brand new. I also found a pair of two of this game, The Lord of the Rings, Aragorn's Quest. And I am a reseller. They were just $2 each, factory sealed. I am a reseller, so I'll sell these at shows for maybe $8, $10 a piece. Maybe I'll crack one open and check it out before I sell or whatever. If I like it, maybe I'll keep it. But anyway, I found 2 of these. Anytime you're at Half Price Books, look in their clearance section, where it's just their general clearance section where you can find books and multimedia, or in the gaming. Sometimes their video games that are on clearance will be with the game themselves, maybe down below or whatever. But you definitely want to check out Half Price Books for video games, especially the clearance stuff. I found a lot of good stuff there to play or to resell, $2 or $3 each. Sometimes factory sealed, like this one. So early Saturday morning, I got up and I went on into Tulsa, Oklahoma for the Name Your Game Expo. I keep wanting to call it the New York Game Expo because it's NYGE, and that title threw me off at first, the shortening of it. But anyway, it's the Name Your Game Expo. Very professionally ran. It turned out to be a great show. Lots of people attended, especially for a first show. It was busy all weekend. There were people playing arcade games, console games. I did a panel on YouTubing, which was a lot of fun. And it was actually well attended, and I got some great questions. Very cool. And let me show you some of the pickups I made there. There was one retailer there, a guy that owned a comic book and video game store. I picked up a copy of Marvel First, the 1970s. It's a great book because a lot of the sort of B and C list characters for Marvel, it has reprints of their first appearances, their first issues. Characters like Dracula, Man-Thing, Luke Cage, Tigra, on and on and on. Really neat book, and so that gave me something to read during the show, maybe during slower points or whatever, but there weren't many. It was a good, steady show throughout the weekend. And I also picked up, I like quirky things that I find, especially book-related. I found this Street Fighter II hardcover book, which is sort of like the Where's Waldo. If you go through, it's pretty neat design. And I'm not sure how much time I'll actually spend looking for the characters, but what I really like about it, I love the cover. It'll be a nice display piece. $4, great deal. Obviously a no-brainer to pick up. The other thing I got at Name Your Game Expo, I picked up a copy of, so next to me, there was a gentleman, probably in his 60s, a horror novelist. He writes horror novels and short stories. He had 3 novels there for sale. along with a book of short stories. And I got to talking to him. I always love talking to fellow writers. We can talk about, sort of talk about challenges with writing, the publisher's market, what things are like, our writing routines. So we talked a little bit about that kind of stuff. And he suggested I trade a copy of my short story book, The Arcade, with his short story book, which is called 13 Nightmares. The man's name is Dennis McDonald. Now, I hesitated a little bit about this, but I was like, sure, it's just, my book of short stories, and trade for another book of short stories, fine. No great loss. I've got, plenty of them in stock. And, with some of these independent authors set up at trade shows, at comic book shows, video game shows, you never know about the quality. There's some really good stuff. There's some not so good stuff. And most of my reading, I spend, if I'm going to read short stories, I'll typically read, some of the masters of the genre, like Rod Serling, Charles Beaumont, Richard Matheson, Robert Bloch, people like that, in the horror realm. That's what I'm going to be reading. Stephen King. So just Dennis McDonald, someone I'd never heard of, an independent writer based in Oklahoma, and his stories are set in Oklahoma. But I read 2 stories from this book while I was at the show, and I was fascinated. He did a great job. He's a legitimately good writer. I was surprised how much I enjoyed the stories. They're creepy. They're well written. Highly recommended. You can find his books on Amazon. Just look under 13 Nightmares by Dennis McDonald. Thanks, Dennis. Cool trade. I appreciate it. And so, like I said, throughout the weekend, it was a busy show. I had a lot of fun. I didn't actually have any gaming picks up, actual video game pickups at the show, but I did sell a fair amount. I'll admit, I didn't sell a ton of stuff at this show, but book sales were solid. I was slightly disappointed with the game sales. I'm always going to be straight and up front with you guys, tell you exactly what's going on. I'm not going to just say, oh, this show, I sold 1 million games, even if I didn't. Sales were sort of mediocre to solid. Book sales were good, but everything else I brought, a lot of people were just browsing. But it was a very interactive show. People were, like I said before, everybody, there were the console games, the arcades, there was cosplay, and everybody was just having an absolutely fantastic time. Probably a few more browsers than I would have liked, but hey, everybody had fun. I made a profit. I got to hang out with my friends. Thank you, Delph Meek, for letting me stay with you on Friday night. And then Saturday night, I stayed with Jesse Hardesty. He's another good friend of mine that I've met at the Oklahoma Video Game Expo, the late lamented Oklahoma Video Game Expo. As a matter of fact, he was the man who started and, organized the Oklahoma Video Game Expo. And it was the first time I'd really gotten to spend a lot of time with him. I crashed at his and his wife Vicky's house that Saturday night. He was very generous to let me do that. And what was really cool, he showed me his game room, took me on the grand tour, and he is like a technical wizard. He's like talking to a guy in Star Trek. He showed me his game room and all the different mods he had made to his different consoles. He actually fixed up his Vectrex where it can use a Sega Genesis controller, and where he had a mod so it didn't have the buzzing sound, which is notorious on that otherwise great console. And he had it hooked up to stereo speakers. So we played a couple of games on that, and I was just absolutely blown away. To play the Vectrex with the Genesis controller with stereo sound was just phenomenal. So I had a lot of fun with Jesse. They treated me to dinner that night at this excellent local place, and so had some great pot roast and pancakes. Jesse had ordered this giant breakfast and gave me one of his pancakes, so that was fun. And so I posted on Facebook, I said, pot roast and pancakes, the new chicken and waffles. And I actually didn't have them together, but I did have the pancake for dessert, and that was a lot of fun. Uneventful trip home, which is always what you want, smooth ride. So it was a great show. The Name Your Game Expo. And in the comments, I'll post a link to that show and a couple of other relevant links. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Hit that subscribe button below the video. I would greatly appreciate it. Peace out.